Okay, now getting ready to uh, go ahead and design the printed circuit board for the controller. I messed around with the cardboard pieces, and yeah, I think I kind of like this shape, so I'm going to go ahead and order the PCB in this shape. And while I was looking around at pieces, I found I did have at least one more of these just general all-purpose printed PCBs, which was the same shape as that controller. So oftentimes it's a good idea after getting a design ready to send off to the factory to go ahead and solder one by hand that is an exact match of your design. That way you know it works before ordering it. I don't think I'm going to do that today. I just wanted to throw that suggestion out. Those are pretty cheap. It's just a two-sided PCB with a whole bunch of holes in it that match the spacing on a breadboard. Good for mocking up designs and really useful for complicated designs. That way you can test them before ordering it from the factory. But I sat here and just kind of messed around with this for a moment, and I think I'm going to go with this size controller. And it's pretty comfortable for my hand. So I think I want that to be the size of the outside case. And we're going to order this from a factory. So you want to make sure you're precise with your measurements. So I got a little set of calipers here. Make sure those are zeroed out. Yeah, so we'll come in here and measure everything and make sure it's all spaced correctly, kind of like 17.7 millimeters for the nano, and kind of measure that out. I have some of the momentary tactile switches from another design I'm going to copy over that I already know all that's in the exact right place, so I'm just going to copy those from a previous design. But again, get you some calipers and make sure you have all the measurements precise. That way when you order it from the, because we're going to order this from the factory and they're going to need those exact sizes. But I'm going to need both hands in order to take these measurements. So I won't be putting that on the video. I recently broke my gooseneck that holds the phone, so I'm having to use a hand for that. And I think this was a comfortable size, so I'm going to use this cardboard cutout here that I set up. Only I want this to be the size for the case. So for the PCB, once I get all these measurements width-wise and height-wise, I'll go ahead and subtract exactly 1 centimeter to leave it a little bit of room for the plastic case that'll go around it, which we'll be designing later. But for now, we're going to take all these measurements and then get started designing up the PCB to go ahead and order that and more permanently solder these pieces together. So here we are back over in Easy EDA Designer to get this ready. So I'm logged in, so I'm just going to go ahead and get the profile picture and go to the actual designer page, which takes us right back to where we were the other day. So we're open sheet 1, and here's our wiring schematic. And this has been bothering me every time I look at this. I'm going to highlight all that and kind of center that on the page. It kept bothering me seeing that off center. That's at least closer to the middle. And we saw first time we looked at this that once the wiring schematic's done, we can just go to design, convert to PCB, file, save first, and then go convert to PCB. And it'll just generate the PCB diagram for us with these pieces brought in. So there's some discrepancies on the ones I used here. So the nanos probably what I want, but these little red pads, those are for SMT technology, surface mount technology. That's the ones where we typically have a machine do it, all very small pieces, all pressed on from the top. Same thing with the resistors, whereas these two seem to have holes for other pieces to go through. And I think I'm going to do the whole thing from scratch instead of using this, but I am going to copy some things from this. So if we zoom in on this footprint from the nano that we used, though, let's see, and click and drag around and try to get where those holes are centered on things. That looks pretty centered. You'll notice that by default, the grid seems to line up exactly with those pins on the Nano. So the default grid should be set to match the same size as a breadboard. So things that plug into the breadboard, you have that shape. If you want that spacing, the default grid's there, and you can see somewhere over here there's information about the grid. Ah, here it is. So grid size is 2.54. 2.54 millimeters. That's the, if your grid is not that size, that's most likely the size you want to match the spacing on the breadboard. So that's the first thing to check. And let's check and make sure this is the right size. So we want to be precise with our measurements. So a tool we're going to use a lot is this one right here, the dimension tool. So we get these little crosshairs when we click on it, and we'll come down and left click to select the first point and drag over and left click again to get the second point. So it looks like the width, and then click again wherever you want the number to go, and then right click to undo the tool. So 17.78, it's just a little bit wider than what I measured with the calipers. But this, the yellow line here, we can see the yellow is the top silk layer. So this is the silk screen that will be printed on there. So that yellow line is showing the outline. So slightly bigger than the calipers, seems like the right shape. So I'm going to just copy that Nano onto a new one in order to get started. And same thing with switches. I use the 12 millimeter by 12 millimeter square momentary tactile switches, which I know I have in another design. So I'm going to copy from that other design and bring those in. And same thing with resistors. So these are for SMT, little bitty resistors, itty bitty tiny things. And I'm going to go ahead and do everything with holes. So I'm going to use the regular resistors big enough I can work with my fingers when I solder pieces together. And I also have that in another design. So I'm going to copy a bunch of stuff into a new design to work with instead of using this. So I just wanted to point out that dimension tool. I'll go ahead and select that and delete that dimension that's there. Well, it doesn't want to delete, but that's, if I can select it, I can't tell if that's selected or not. Oh yeah, there it goes. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to copy this piece over to a new one and draw everything from scratch. And like I just said, I'm also going to copy the switches and resistors over from another design. So if I'll come up here and open my old projects, I think I have it in this one. Yes, this will have it. If I can figure out which one's the PCB. Is that one? Yes, this is the one I want. So I'm going to copy. So here's the exact switch size and these holes that match it with some labels. I'm going to copy that over. And this is the size of the resistors that are big enough to work with with my fingers instead of having to have a machine put them on there. So I'm going to copy those over. Those shapes have the spacing all right and everything. So I'm going to go to a new PCB and I want a custom shape. I'm going to measure in millimeters, and 2 layers should work. We'll talk about this, but we usually want to have 2 layers of copper, a top layer and a bottom layer. And that way we can set up all our connections inside of the board without anything crossing. And oftentimes 1 layer is not quite enough for that. So we need 2 layers so we can go back and forth between them to make sure we don't have don't have any lines cross or touch. We'll see that as we put this together. So 2 copper layers measured in millimeters, and I'm going to do a custom shape. So I'll just go ahead and hit apply. And that gets us started here. So I'll go ahead and copy those pieces over. So over on this one, I'm just going to select the nano here and push Control C to copy. Whoops. Come over to this new one. Where's the origin? Okay, there we go. And hit Control V to paste it. And we can just drag it around and just kind of put it in here for now because we know we're going to need that. And then also have those on this. I'm going to copy this. That's the outline for a silk screen, along with a couple holes to go with it. So I'll just do, actually I want everything over here, don't I? Those holes, that, and a couple labels there. Yeah, that'll work. So Control C to copy, come over here, and Control V to paste these because I know I'm going to need them. And we still need to draw the outline for the joystick and set some holes on that. But that will cover, and that'll cover all the pieces. So let's get started into the outline of the board now.